kind of nervous.
Are you guys all in Fort Mac or?
Yeah, we're all in Fort Mac.
小点声音，我们现在在说话。
Sorry.
How's things going Fort Mac?
It's good. These people have been within youth computing for a bit longer. I've recently just joined, like a couple months ago, actually. So I'm fairly new. If you want to know more about it, I think you should ask. You should ask them.
Yeah. So why don't you? Well, since we have a few minutes, maybe just tell me a bit about youth computing in 3 minutes, maybe.
So basically, we're just a youth-led organization. We're all quite young, like high school students, and we just set up events around the community and to try and bring technology to the community and set up events for the public to show like the broad range of applications in technology. And so just like some of the events and things we do are like a community code day, hackathons. This is one of our new events. Like we're only doing this for the first time, the fireside event, in light of this entire COVID situation. And yeah.
So who has been your audience for the majority time? Say, is it elementary schools students or middle school students, or?
I'd say it's around that range from elementary school to middle school. We've also had lots of high school students participate in our hackathons too, right?
Depending on, I guess, maybe the events that we're putting that we set up, the audience can kind of vary because we have a event called Launch with Buffalo where it's to talk about entrepreneurship in conjunction with STEM. So there we do get a few adults at our events as well, there to listen to the workshops and things, and the workshops and speakers that we bring in. But so it's a broad range because there's middle school students, younger elementary school students, some high school students as well, and adults as well. So it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, we have our different events which are organized to pander to different demographics, right? So like a month ago, I think Dhruv and Devani, they had the like introduction to API workshop, and so that was directed to middle school, high school kids, right?
Nice. I think this is a very meaningful organization events you're putting together. Thank you all for doing this.
You should thank Dhruv and you should also thank us, but you should also thank Dhruv and Devani. Man, they actually treat us so well. I mean, they help us with workshops. They even gave us like challenges to do over break. So like we're setting up like a web application for our shop, which is basically if you attend events, they record your name, right? And then basically once you reach a certain amount of points, you can redeem them from rewards. Anyways, I think it's almost 1 p.m. So Chris, have you started streaming it yet? Oh. All right, so Xiaoshi, why don't you just introduce youth computing to the people who have just entered?
Yeah, sure. So hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first virtual series of Fireside Conversations. In this series, we will be having a very diverse and decorated panel of guests here to talk to us about their experiences in their vast range of fields. This series was put together by Youth Computing, a youth-led nonprofit organization that works to bring technology and its wide range of applications to our community.
All right, thank you, Xiaoshi, for introducing Youth Computing. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction about our guest today, Gary Huang. So, all right, so to start off our series of Fireside Conversations, we have invited Gary Huang as our first guest this week. And so Gary he currently works at Layer 6 AI in Toronto as a machine learning data scientist. However, beforehand, he has also worked here in Fort McMurray. So he's kind of an Alberta native, sort of. And so during that time in Fort McMurray, he worked at Suncor as an advanced process control engineer. And so before that, if we're going to get deeper into his schooling, he's been to the University of Toronto. He's been to Stanford too. Two very, very good universities. Maybe you could say borderline prestigious. He's received his Master's of Science, his Master's in Computer Science. and also his a bachelor's in science too. And so let's just give a round of applause for Gary Huang.
Thank you for having me.
It's really nice for me to see you again. It's been a while, and so we also want to focus on the tech aspect. Having Gary here is pretty personal to me because you actually we actually know each other for quite a long time, right? Like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, something like that.
4 or 5 years. And so I remember the first time I met you was actually at the Sunday school, where you were volunteering to teach chess to all the Chinese kids, right? Right after the Mandarin lessons.
Chinese class, yeah.
Yeah, and so despite being such a capable person, right? He still takes time out of his day to help us out, attend those Thursdays chess meetups, And so I just want to thank you for coming here today, and I'm thankful that I met you beforehand too. You were able to introduce me to a lot of Sins, and I hope that you can introduce us to Sins, about your profession and talk to us about your career. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure for me to be here to be talking and share my experience to a lot of students who might be or might not be interesting to STEM yet, but hopefully our conversation can encourage you to at least explore in this direction.
Pause. I just want to let our audience know that we are also accepting questions. So throughout the stream, if you just type in the chat box, we'll be free to answer them right after. All right, so let's just get on first with the first question. Even though we're trying to make it more of a conversation, we're still going to follow like a rough interview format. All right, so okay, do you want to go ask the first question, Xiaoshi? Get more acquainted with.
I think it might be a good idea to let our audience know exactly who you are, what you do, what your profession is. So if you could just provide a brief description.
Okay. Let me just start by saying that my ties with Alberta is more than like the few years I've worked there. I actually first of all, I was born in China. I came to Canada when I was around 14 years old, and my first city that landed was actually Calgary. I did my high school in Calgary, Sir Winston Churchill High School to be more specific. Then I did my undergrad in Toronto and a master's degree in the States. Afterwards, I came back to Alberta. I worked for Suncor Energy in Fort Mac for about 5 years as the advanced process control engineer. And that was till the summer of 2018, where I decided to change things up a little bit. I went back to school in U of T, did a master's degree in computer science. And since then, I've been staying in Toronto, working for Layer 6 as a data scientist or machine learning scientist. Yeah, that's briefly my life so far.
Wow, it's a pretty interesting life,
It is.
Sir Winston Churchill High School. I think I have a few friends who go there.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the better schools in the province, So I actually want to ask you. So you said that you weren't born in Canada, right? You were born in China, and then you were around high school. You immigrated here, right? So I want to ask. I think we're all pretty curious, and we want to know how did you adapt to such a change when you were in such a foreign land?
Well, thinking back, I don't really have a typical methodology for adaptation. I mean, I was 14 years as like high school, grade 8, grade 9. You got thrown into a new environment. You have to pick up English quite fast. Otherwise, you cannot talk to anybody. So sometimes it's like the environment forced you into this. To be honest, it was a quite painful year, especially for the first year when I was here. And I think I do share this kind of experience with a lot of new immigrants. Despite how old they are when they came in here, the first year is always tough, but you cannot be afraid of it. You just have to face it and overcome whatever it is that's thrown at you, I guess.
Yeah. So with any hurdle, with any challenge, there's always going to be that one hurdle that you have to cross that first, right?
And you have to believe that you do have what it takes to get over them, right?
Right. So just you immigrated here and you adapted to the high school environment here. So was there something that was a part of your high school, or what part of your life inspired you to go into STEM and really like cultivated your passion for it?
I'm not sure if my case applied to everybody, but in my case, it's more of a family influence than a school or society influence. I actually came from an engineering family, if you want to call it. Both my parents are engineers, and like when I was growing up, yeah, like whether in China or in Calgary, a lot of what I was exposed to, a lot of what they are doing when I was, having some free time is actually engineering related. Say even seeing some equations lying around. So that was, I think, the root cause of me being interested in, say, engineering or science in general, or STEM in general, right?
Interested in logic based, critical thinking,
Yeah.
right? So we've already talked about how you enjoy playing chess, right? So at a young age, you were exposed to that. You were forced. I remember you telling me that you would work on end games first, right? You would only strive to work on end games, and do you
Believe it or
think
not,
chess
that
has?
was actually recognized the recognized way of starting chess. Like you start from the end game first because one is simple and two, it is clean enough for you to be for a kid especially to be reasoning his way out of it, and then you move to the opening games and stuff.
Yeah, so I guess it's a mix of like your own passions at the time and like the kind of pressures emitted from your parents which pushed you to pursue or create your interest in STEM, right? Wow, that's nice. Okay.
Yeah. Was there?
Okay. This isn't sorry, Sakshi.
Oh, I was just gonna
Okay,
ask
all
another
right.
question,
So
but you can go ahead first.
all right. This is gonna be a more informal question, but which do you prefer, Mac or Windows?
Sorry, can you ask again? I think my internet connection might be a bit
Oh,
weak.
sorry, Mac or Windows? Like
Oh,
for work.
I don't use Mac. I use Windows for my daily work, and when I was working, I actually use Linux.
Oh, Linux. Okay. So you have to take all
Yeah,
the time to
Ubuntu.
download. Okay. Oh well, that. Wow. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Also, we talked about your profession earlier. Can you talk about more in depth about what Layer 6 AI does?
Okay, for that, actually, I want to share my screen for a while, if
Yeah, of
I
course,
could,
of course.
because as it turns out, I was preparing a bit slideshow for this presentation, so I'm gonna just share one slide from there. Can you see my
Yeah, of
screen?
course.
Okay, cool. So let me start from the higher level. Layer 6 AI was started off as a machine learning related company. It was acquired by TD Canada, I think about 2 years ago. And so right now it's actually part of TD. And what we do is actually can be divided into three sections. I mean, we're still based on machine learning and data science, so that's our foundation. But on top of that, we do three kind of things. First, we do competitions, aka Kaggle challenges to be more specific, where we sharpen our tools in terms of producing projects or finishing tasks. And on this end, we actually compete with a lot of global competitions and a lot of the big names, for example, NVIDIA, Google, Facebook. The second part was actually on TD use cases, where we use these tools to do business cases with TD to help them make their process flows faster. And for example, some of the applications will be on insurance fraud, algo trading, credit risk assignments. And the third part, where was the interesting part, in my opinion, was actually doing research, pure academic research, where we not only collaborate with, but also compete against leading research institutions like Vector Institute, like Microsoft Research, like Google DeepMind, and Google Brain, where we publish academic papers on a lot of machine learning related fields like natural language processing, computer vision, healthcare, even quantum mechanics, believe it or not. So yeah, that's a brief description of what we do. I hope that's enough for you guys.
Wow,
That
that's really impressive.
That is really interesting to hear about. Was there anything specific that I don't know prompted you to join the Layer 6 AI group? Was it something that it was just an opportunity that popped up, or was it something that was one of your goals? How exactly did that opportunity come to you?
I see. So in terms of Layer 6, that was more of a to be honest, I didn't know what Layer 6 is before I joined them. But when I was doing my master's, that master program actually came up with the internship period of like 8 months. And during the recruitment event, Layer 6 came and they were presenting their projects. And of course, what they presented was really cool and really fancy in my opinion. So I applied, and apparently they think I'm a very good candidate. I did an internship with them, and apparently they were happy because that project eventually led to this ICML paper, a recent paper I've published, and that's why I stayed in there after my intern finished. And regarding on a higher level, why I switched to data science from my original engineering background, that was actually, believe it or not, it was actually related to chess. So, like I said, I'm a chess player. I began playing chess when I was 7, 8 years old. And for those of you who know chess, there was actually a computer program that beat the chess championship Gary Kasparov back in, I don't know, 1998 or something, called the Deep Blue, developed by IBM. And so that was actually quite a long time ago. But what's recent, well, more recent, was that back in 2012, 2013, somewhere around there, there was actually a program developed by Google called the AlphaGo that actually beat the world champions or a previous world champion at Go, which was a chess-like game that we thought will take at least 10 more years for computer to beat us at. So that was shocking to most people, and even more shocking to chess players like me. And that's actually when data science started to get my attention. I started paying more attention to it. Even when I was working as an engineer, I was looking around news, not only news, but some courses on that. And as you probably know, nowadays online courses are everywhere. So I started taking a few courses, and that got me more interested. And all these understanding and curiosity about data science led to my decision to do another master's program back in 2018.
So I guess it could be summed up. You saw how the power AI held, right? The capabilities it has and improving, even surpassing humans. So that's basically what interested you, right?
Yep.
Oh, I guess that's the way for most people, right? They're interested in seeing how they can improve upon. Well, okay. You talked very briefly about chess. This is kind of sidetracking away from the more professional side, but not talking about like the Deep Blue. Uh, who's the strongest chess player you faced?
Still, I played actually a few high-rated tournaments after I left for Mac, but I still have to say the strongest one I've actually played was a woman international master, Agnieszka Mattress Clement, and she was a brilliant chess player as well as a wonderful person in general.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
was she still is she still teaching you guys online?
Well, I have private lessons with her now, so me and Ray.
Nice. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you will learn a lot.
Yeah. She actually recommends me like not typical opening moves. Like for instance, there's this variation within the Rai Lopez exchange, right? Normally you're supposed to push f6 in order to protect the pawn, but she has very weird personal moves that normal people don't even think of playing. So it just shows how her ability to think on the spot,
Yes,
a true intellectual,
I agree. I completely agree.
So previously in your explanation, you had briefly talked about your recent optimization paper. So we were hoping if you could just expand a little bit on that. How did it feel to have it be so successful, and some of the thoughts that were included in your optimization paper?
So yeah, I'd like to. I can talk a little bit about it. It's quite technical, to be honest. So without going into the details of technicality, which will take some time and will probably be puzzling. Just on a higher level, I'm pretty sure you guys all are familiar with something called Google Translate.
Yes.
Yeah, so what it does is that it takes the input language and it outputs the designated target language and translate the same. Well, tries its best to translate its meanings. Behind that website or behind that thing is a model. Google actually uses slightly different models for some different language sets. But one of the most common structures they use was actually called transformers. It was a model proposed back in 2017, either 2017 or 2018. Also actually proposed by the researchers in Google, actually. So our work was actually to dig more into the actual mechanism, the actual structure of that model, finding out some limitations they have and optimize based on it. So yeah, so on a very high level, that's our paper. Like I said before, it started as an internship project because we're doing a research-based intern instead of doing like a very trivial stuff. We're focusing on research project. That thing actually started, I think, back in May 2019, and it took me at least 3 months to get a formalize the theory behind it, like 5 more months or 8 more months to run the experiments and to wrap everything up. That was like just 2 months ago. So that project took me literally a year. But the good thing is that I actually ended up in a paper, which I was very happy. I mean, it's not, to be honest, like a paper in ICML is, to be honest, not that big of a deal. But for my personally, it was a recognition of my 1 years of hard work. So I'm really happy.
Paid off. It paid off.
Very insightful.
So for like maybe people who are more knowledgeable about it, is there a place where they can read it? Or is it
Yes,
like
there is this published online. Let me take a bit. Yeah, I'll try to find the address and post it in the chat, actually.
all right, okay.
Yeah, but you guys go ahead. It will take me a bit.
All right, so maybe while you're searching that up, we'll ask you some more questions. Not questions that will go very in depth. Okay, uh, so you talked about how your parents have been big role models for you. That's what pushed you to pursue engineering, right? How how witnessing the power of artificial intelligence firsthand has also pushed you. Well, putting your your professional life aside, do you think how have your parents like just impacted you as an individual?
I would say that the most important thing I learned from them was actually to reason about stuff, and on top of that, to explore stuff that you're not familiar with. And this is actually in recognition that not all the stuff you explore will lead to happy endings, I guess. But nevertheless, you need to explore stuff, and when you explore, you need to try to reason about it and try to. I mean, as on a higher level, just to try new things. Always try new things. Don't be stuck in your comfortable room, in your inner circle that you're happy with. I mean, I know it feels more comfortable when you just stay in there, but always try new stuff on our general level.
I definitely think that's advice that all of us can apply in our daily lives. That's really insightful. I was going to ask.
Oh, how about we take a break from our questions and look at the audiences.
Yeah,
All right,
sure.
so
Audience.
Drew Patel asked, "Hi Gary, what are your thoughts on AGI, and do you have any predictions for the future?"
Depending on how you view and define the AGI again, say like the generalized artificial intelligence, a lot of times, at least from what I heard, people confuse the idea of people confuse the two words artificial intelligence and machine learning together. And when I introduce myself, more often than not, I introduce myself as a data scientist or machine learning engineer, machine learning scientist, not a AI scientist. because sometimes I think when people think about the word AI, they think of instantly of like Matrix, which is probably not going to come true till, I don't know, at least 20 years or so. But yeah, and when you talk about the term of AGI, if you do think about, you know, Agent Smith and the Machine Empire, that's probably not going to come true in a while. But when you think of, if you define it as as either a robot or a algorithm that can do some helpful things in certain fields that will help us human beings getting more free time to think, to innovate, or just to relax. And I think that is actually already here, because I remember seeing an article, I forgot from where, but it's saying that in a university chemistry lab, they're already having a robotic hand programmed with certain algorithm. I'm not sure if it's neural network based or just rule based, but it can already do a lot of experiments for human beings. It's actually much more efficient because it can follow precise instructions, and it only takes 2 hours to charge every day, and that means I can work for 22 hours a day. No one can do as a human being. So if you think about AGI in that kind of sense, I think it's already in our life, and it will change our life like dramatically.
Yeah, you talked about how you don't want to be defined as what AI scientist. Yeah,
No,
data.
I mean, like, let me clarify. I don't introduce myself as AI scientist, but that's just because I think people have the tendency of thinking AI as in Matrix AI.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Data science. Data science has
Data scientists or machine learning scientists. I think those
yeah.
are more.
That's what's the craze now. It's the trend.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Let's take another question.
We want to move. The next question is from Nirmit Parikh, and he's asking, how has AI impacted you as an individual?
I think we already talked about that a tiny bit.
Tiny bits here and there. I mean, like I said again, the what do you call it, AI program or neural network program, AlphaGo, beating the previous Go champion Lisa Doe. I mean, it changed the world's view on neural network, but also changed my view on the data science field. So that's definitely one thing. Other than that, I mean, I guess I'm not sure about all of you, but I have used Google Translate more than once or twice, and that has AI behind it in a general sense. Not to mention something like, nowadays there's apps like TikTok, Facebook newsfeed and stuff. All these actually have different kind of algorithm that can all be classified as AI in general. So sometimes you might not even realize that what you use, what you see, what you do is partially supported by AI algorithms, but they really are.
It's really all around us. So we have another question from Devani Patel. And his question is, hey, Gary, what would you recommend high school students do if they're interested in data science and machine learning?
I would say that if you're interested, and by interest I don't mean, oh, this looks fancy, let me find out some news and that, so I can brag about it to my friends and stuff. If you're really interested, I do recommend you to study math to start with. I know this might not be the thing you want to hear, but if you really want to get into it, math is actually the foundation of understanding everything related to data science and related to AI.
Okay, so basically just have your math done, right?
Math and say math related like physics, chemistry, like the STEM subjects, right? Because to really understand data science, to really understand the models, you really need to understand math as well.
We have
And I
another.
mean, let's take a step back. Even if it's not data science related, even if it's not AI related, does understanding math actually hurt you? I doubt it. I seriously doubt it, because behind math is actually logical reasoning, and I think logical reasoning can be applied to much more than just AI. It applies to every, like, even if you do something that's completely unrelated to these AI or IT in general, having the ability to reason, having the ability to understand what's going on never hurts.
We're going to take another question from Shreya Patel. And she says, hello, Gary. What would a timeline look like to develop an artificial intelligence system? how much data is needed in order to successfully create a product such as self-driving cars?
Yeah, that is actually a $1 million question, and forgive me that I don't have the answer to that, because obviously I don't have $1 million yet. I mean, behind that question is what everyone wants to know at Google, Uber, and Tesla, because you can see that they are testing, they're gathering data, they're trying to perfect their autonomous self-driving vehicles, and so far, I hate to say, but apparently it's not there yet. And if someone do have the question, I'm pretty sure Elon Musk would love to offer him a job at at Tesla. So sorry, I don't have the answer to that question.
Well, I guess you don't know everything. I'm disappointed.
No,
I'm
not
disappointed.
not even close.
Oh wow, that's great. So wow, yeah, okay. I think we have some more questions here, and we're just gonna keep bouncing off some more questions. Okay?
I have one more question from our team that wasn't quite in the live chat, but could you elaborate a bit more on why exactly the organization is called Layer 6?
Actually, I have no idea. I would imagine next time I will raise this to our CTO and CEO, and if I have an answer, I'll get back to you. I would imagine it has something to do with how the how a neural network looks like, because nowadays the fundamental structure behind all these deep neural networks is layers of so-called neuron-like structures stacked on top of each other. So they have layers after layers, and I'm not sure why they call it 6. I will definitely double check with them, but I would imagine that name has something to do with that structure.
All right. And this is just a question that I had before that I didn't get a chance to ask you, but you've obviously had like a very successful career. You've experienced quite a bit, but what would you say was one of your biggest struggles like starting out, maybe choosing your career, or one of the biggest hurdles that you had to overcome?
This actually gets me back to when I was a third or fourth year students back in undergrad. The thing is that, as you can probably see from my LinkedIn profile and stuff, I actually did a aeronautics engineer in my undergrad as well in graduate school. And the reason, say, for example, back in the second year when I was 20 years old, I really had a struggle to choose what specific engineering program I want to do. I mean, to choose from like computer engineering, electrical engineering, infrastructure, there's tons more. And you don't know, right? And back then I know that it is going to be a big decision. And I chose aerospace. Looking back from today is probably not the best choice I can make. But I chose aerospace because I know back then I was interested in it. I mean, there's a saying that it's it's a man's biggest dream to fly, right? And the aerospace engineering seems to be one of the closest discipline around that direction. So that's why I chose it, because I am interested in it, not because it makes the biggest, like most money, or because it looks the fanciest. Well, maybe part of it. But I was curious about it. I took that direction, even though it might turn out to be the best decision I've ever made. I'm not regretting it, not even once to this day. Then the same thing goes that, for example, after I graduate, after I worked for Suncor for 5 years, I mean, I guess you can probably imagine that when I decided to switch career directions, that was no easy job, right? I mean, you're making a big decision in your life. You're making a step outside of the comfort zone, like I said before. These decisions are very hard, and not just for me, but if you're to facing similar decisions, it will be hard for you. And my take was that you have to really ask yourself what you're interested in, because only if you're interested in something, only if you have your heart on that thing, can you pull yourself together and get through whatever obstacle you will definitely face in the future.
Yeah, because like if it's just the only thing that's pushing you is monetary gain, then really, really, you can't ensure that you actually will be able to get such high paying job. It's just like you need to be. actually have some real motivation to actually get you through the program, right?
Exactly. And I mean, even if we take it a bit further, even if you got a very high paying job, what if you don't like it?
That's
Do,
true.
do you
That's
still
true.
do you still have what it takes to get you up every day just to make, I don't know, whatever you're making, even though you say don't like or even hate your job? Can you do that? Not really, right? I mean, or at least in my imagination, probably not the best way I want to.
So, Gary, we actually have another question from Devani again. And so this time his question is, what are your thoughts on Lambda or some other name schools? The ones where you learn code over a few months and go join a company instead of going to university.
I see. First of all, I'm not familiar with that school he was talking about, but I get the question in general. My opinion was that uh, let's put it this way: a lot of people think of university or even the more famous university compared to others as if they learn something a lot fancier or learn something that they will never learn in, say, college or community college or I mean, for example, a piano in Mac. That's not the case. That's definitely not the case. At least in my opinion, that's not. For example, in terms of coding, you can learn coding. You can probably learn sufficient coding from that institute you were talking about. You can probably even learn enough coding just by going to YouTube and Coursera and whatever online course MOOC websites there are. You can probably still learn that. And hey, I mean nowadays since there's information on coding everywhere, you can just probably just like learn by yourself. Buy a book. There's always like say Python for Dummy or Java for Dummy. You can probably learn enough from there to get a decent job. That's not what university is going for. In my opinion, university programs are trying to lay out a foundation for a subject, build up a framework so that you not only know what you're doing, why you're doing it, but you actually learn what's underneath it, or the structure or the theory or the deeper meanings for doing this. Um, for lack of a better word, let's call it the ground truth or something. And that actually takes more than like since we're talking about programming, it takes no more than I don't know 2 seconds to type "hello world." It will probably take you a bit more than that to understand what's going on between you typing "hello world" and what's being printed out on the screen. And it will take like maybe a year more to actually know how the compiler works to compile everything together. And if you want to dig down into the machine level, which I have no idea how it works, like how it translates hello world from the machine language 001100 back to hello world on the screen, that will probably take you, I don't know, a university degree, let's say.
Right. I think that was definitely very insightful. It gave a lot of us perspective, a new perspective on university that we might not have considered before. But on the same topic of schools and universities and things, what would you say is the biggest piece of advice you could give to people going into university or university students, from anything from like personal connections you make with people or the actual education and schooling itself?
Um, that's a very general question, to be honest. And
Yeah, yeah.
I do think the thing is that like I can only speak for myself, and I realize that I have in no position to speak for everyone. Everyone has their choice of lifestyle or approaches. So let me put it this way. I don't think there's one right approach to university or anything in general. You have to make your own decisions, and other than maybe a few choices, I don't think there's a definitely right decision. You
Right.
just have to remember that, yes?
I was just gonna say, I think a better question might have been, if it was phrased, what is the biggest lesson that you learned in university that you would want to share with others?
Oh, actually along the same direction. Let me put it front first. I think the biggest lesson I learned, I think the biggest lesson I want, new students, whether it's high school, middle school, or students to learn is that you have to be responsible for your decisions.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you which decisions are right or wrong. I mean, I do think there are a few wrong decisions that no one should make. But hey, who am I to say, right? But you have to be the one responsible because you're eventually the one who's taking up the consequence of your own decision. And from quoting from the Spider-Man movie, the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. You are responsible for your choices, and you're responsible for your own life. So whatever choice you make, think about what you're doing before you do them.
Yeah,
I know
'cause
it's
I feel
very general, it's a bit cliche, but pardon me on that.
yeah, because someone else can't really tell you how you live your life. You yourself have to decide that. You have to weigh the
And
consequences.
let me put in more specific examples, I guess. We've all heard how Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg actually dropped out of Harvard or whatever university they were attending to create a company that was they're famous for. Microsoft in the case of Bill Gates, Facebook in the case of Mark Zuckerberg, and that's what a lot of people were saying, that I don't need a university degree, I can just be like Mark Zuckerberg. Sure, that is your choice, but what if you don't, right? Can you take up the consequences of dropping out of a university, even maybe a prestigious program, to run the risk of not going to make it? I mean, you might as well do, and I will be very happy for you. But eventually, you will be the one who's responsible for what you face afterwards.
So we have another quote, not quote, sorry, question in our live chat from Shreya Patel, and she is asking, can you please explain what a neural network in artificial intelligence is and how it mimics the human brain?
I see. First of all, I'd like to say that there's probably a ton of introductory videos on YouTube, then I can explain at best here. So if you really want to know what's going on, I do refer you to YouTube or any other millions of websites that are introducing this, but I'll try my best here. Neural network was started as an attempt to mimic the human brain, because as human beings, we know that we can actually learn things in a very interesting and fancy and general way. Okay, our one brain can learn a lot of different tasks. So, and we know that human brain consists of neurons that takes bioelectrical stimulus from multiple neighboring neurons and send out one signal outwards, or multiple signal outwards. So the idea of neural network was that to mimic this kind of thing, you have different structures that serves as neurons that receives the input from neighboring neurons structures and output some results after calculation to neighboring neurons. And the idea is that coupling this kind of structure that mimics the human brain's organization, I guess, coupling it with a learning mechanism we call backpropagation, proposed or at least heavily used by Geoffrey Hinton, now known as the godfather of machine learning or neural networks, actually. So coupling these two together, that creates the backbone of nowadays deep learning, which we call neural network. So that was a very, very high level, probably not so accurate description of that. Again, for more, please go to YouTube and search neural network.
That was still a really good, brief explanation of it, because obviously it would take forever if we tried to explain all of it right now. Another question that we have from our live chat is from Lokesh Patel, and he's asking how COVID-19 and the global pandemic has affected your career and your organization, like the one you're part of, Layer 6.
I see. So yeah, that's a very good question. The COVID-19 definitely impact us a lot here. On my personal side, we were still going to office until the early week of March, I believe. I think that's also when most companies start to sending employees work, many of the schools starting to send students back to home. So for us, because we're more on we're still considered as a IT related department. So for us, it was actually not as impactful as others. For example, I still talk to my teammates and supervisors via Slack, and a lot of what we do is a lot of what we do is actually deriving formulas, so that was okay. Other things includes like running models simulations on computers, and as long as we have internet connection to the office, that was actually not that big of a deal. The main trouble for us was actually communication, because as fancy as convenient as Google Hangout or Slack or Skype TeamViewer is, it still does not replace human to like face-to-face conversation. At least not to not these days, in my opinion. So I mean, we all understand how chatting on Skype is nothing like chatting face to face. Not even to mention deriving mathematical equations on them. That was a pain. Uh, on a more general level for TD, I think the impact was even bigger, just because as a bank that serves clients, the limitation to face-to-face conversation or in human contact does put a big handicap on there. But yeah, I think we changed the style of work a lot. We try to adapt for it. I think we find a way to work, and let's hope this thing gets over soon. September, or if not before the end of the year.
Well,
Yeah.
I doubt how the current situation is going. I doubt September would even. Yeah, like
Yeah,
if we're taking into account the second wave, then there's somewhat like it's a very gray area right now.
I know, I know. September might be a more optimistic point of view. Taking into account second wave, taking into account what's happening in the States.
Yeah, taking into account overall the global travel, right? How
Yeah,
is that going to
exactly,
affect?
exactly. But let's hope for the best, right? We gotta prepare for the worst, but hope for the best, and work hard toward it.
Yeah, obviously right now we can't see you in person. There's
No.
quite a few limitations, but we're working through it. We're working through it. Okay, let's see some other questions. All right, so okay, we have a question from actually, I have a question for you. I have a question for you. So Uh, we talked about your why do you volunteer? We talked about how you volunteered teaching chess. You know, I'm obviously one of your chess creations per se. How do you think volunteer work has affected you? Like, why do you do it?
Well, I think I got a lot of help from my community, whether it's when I first came to Formac or when I was working through my years in Suncor and Formac. I do get a lot of help from my community, people around me, and I think it's only fair for me to give it back. So yeah, I do think volunteering is one of the best way to do it, and not to mention that when I'm volunteering, I think I try my best to pass on what I think is the most helpful advice to well others, not limited to kids and stuff. Um, and I'm glad to see that my impact. I'm glad to see that my effort did impact a few people at least.
For sure. Speaking of volunteering, do you still remember Reno?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I miss him. Yeah, he moved to Edmonton to.
Oh, that's a huge loss. Well, he was doing so much in
He
our
was
community.
doing so much. Like you and him, he came every day to, well, not every day, every week on Thursday
Yeah,
down to
Thursday,
Wednesday
right?
thing.
Yeah.
About that, if we're talking about that, no one really goes anymore because of the pandemic. Well, actually, before
Yeah.
that, traffic was slowing down. I feel like I, as an individual, I think I've been slowly growing away from like the organization itself because I feel like
Yeah,
there's
you,
just
you need a few key personnel to really hold the organization together. And with Gina passing away, Reno moving out, I can only imagine that it will become harder and harder to pull the chess club together. But
you
hey,
really you really
that's
need
life,
like a
right?
strong figure. You need a strong figure who's there, who's
I
gonna
do,
take
I do agree.
responsibility.
I do agree. And that figure back in the days was Gina, and oh, I miss her.
There's no there's Oh, I kind of don't want to talk about that anymore. Feeling sad. Okay, let's kind of shift it away and talk about something else. So we talked about your volunteer work. We've talked about how your role models talked about your perspectives on just learning in general, right? Taking responsibility for your own actions. When's one time when you had to take responsibility for a poor decision you made?
Oh.
You probably don't make many poor decisions, but like just try your best to find one.
It's really hard to think of one right on the spot, to be honest. Not because there is none, but because there's a lot of them. But
Don't
okay, without going into the specific situation, actually, if you remember, a while ago, I was talking about university. You have to be responsible for your own choices, for your own decisions. I think that's just the same way. Okay, let me put it this way, and this is kind of sometimes an interview question might go, because when you in an interview, you might be asking like, how do you account for like failures and stuff? And my answer is always that as a engineering student, I was educated to know to plan for what's the worst thing that could come. And before you make a decision, you have to think about it. Like, you can think of obvious or the best choices, but you have to be prepared for the worst. And if the worst is to happen, can you take that? If you cannot handle the consequence of the worst outcome, you are probably better off not doing that decision at all. So yeah, that's the general answer I have to this question, I guess.
But you can also say every single decision in life comes with its own consequence, and so sometimes you can't really account for everything. Sometimes there's some factors you just can't control. But I like how you worded it. Like, you need to be mindful of what could happen. Be mindful that you if this does occur, that you're able to accept it. You're able to move on from it. So yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I also think that really comes back to what you said before about, at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to have to face the consequences for your own actions. So just, if it's something really big that could be life altering, just think about it, kind of thing. One more thing that I was curious about. So we've definitely seen today that you have a pretty busy lifestyle. You're involved in a lot of different things. So how do you manage to keep that like work and personal life balance, and not let maybe work take over the rest of your life?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question, I have to say, especially in the scene of pandemic, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have to work to a work from home setting. And I've actually talked to a lot of my colleagues. What they have in common, the feeling was that before, you have a sense of waking up, leaving home, going to the office. You work hard through the day, and even if you have to work overtime, by the time you leave the office, you actually come back home, and that is your official working hours done, right? That will help you separate life from work. But nowadays, when you start working, you're actually still at home, right? So that actually blends the work and life sitting together. And I think a lot of my colleagues do agree with that. Like, work from home doesn't really help unless you have a home office, which many of us don't. We just work in the bedroom or
Kitchen at a desk.
yeah, my kitchen
Bedroom.
is not great, but yeah, that's my point. So on that side, I think our CTO actually has a great way of handling it. Whenever before he starts working, he actually leaves home, walk on the street or in his backyard for like 2 minutes, and this way kind of mimics the process of going to office. And when you finish at around say 5 or 6 p.m. in the afternoon, you actually do another walk. I mean, it might be just 2 minutes, but it actually creates the sense of, oh, I'm actually off work. You might still have to work overtime, but that's another story. The other part was, of course, going to the old topic of time management, which I do think I have the room to. I need to improve on that, but it's a general sense of time management. You have to allocate some time for your work, of course, but also for your personal lives, for, I don't know, staying, catching up with friends, or having a healthy cycle. Like, you have to have enough sleep, you have to have enough exercise and stuff. So yeah, that's the general setting.
Yeah, because I feel like this pandemic has eliminated many people's schedules, like their sense of routine. You have to, you
Yeah,
can't.
I
It's.
agree.
I think in these situations, it really shows how self disciplined the individual is if they're able to, you know, keep up with this situation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I
So
totally agree.
But this is anyone can improve upon. You can always get better at time management.
Yeah,
We
you
have
can
enough.
always, but do you though, right? That's the question.
I think I've been doing a bit better. I've been waking up a bit more earlier.
Good for you.
No, but for some reason, even on my productive days, it still feels like it goes by so quickly. Like it seems like, oh, isn't it still June? Oh wait, no, it's already July 11th.
Hmm.
It's Do you get that feeling?
Yeah, I do. I think it's just yesterday. I was talking to my roommate. It's like, oh my god, is it already Friday? I thought it's like Tuesday and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, time do fly, and it is up to you to manage your time well.
Right.
We have a question from Shreya Patel, and do you believe that AI will play a significant role in traffic control, not just cars, maybe even aircraft, to possible mitigate the spread of a future pandemic? I think Saptarshi did his sensor project on this, but
Yeah. So to answer that question, I mean, the answer up front is yes. I do think it will play a bigger role, but first of all, I think AI will play a bigger role in almost any field. I mean, not only in computer science programming, not only in engineering, say plant control, not only in air traffic control or ground traffic control, but also in fields that you might not imagine, like art. I mean, I think you have seen a few news about like algorithm painting artwork. That was kind of weird and interesting in the same way. Interestingly, one of my research projects at Stanford, and like I said before, I was doing aeronautics engineering there. One of my research project was actually on the topic of controlling or directing aircrafts around the airport, so there's less likelihood for collision. And thinking back on that, you like one way, the most fundamental way was actually designing a rule so that when aircrafts follow this, it might be less likely to collide. But the other more data science way was actually maybe to take data of how aircrafts fly in and out, and maybe you can actually find a using neural networks, using data science methods, you maybe can find a better way that human beings might not even think about to approach this kind of air traffic control. But I mean, there are rules, of course. I mean, it's always a sensitive topic, especially around airports and traffic controls. There are rules that maybe algorithms think they will work, but they do not work in the sense of human controlled traffics. But they will almost definitely help. So yeah, my answer to that question is of course yes.
I would love to see a much more efficient aircraft travel. Like, oh, when
That-
your flight gets delayed, that's the worst feeling.
yeah. I think it's really interesting to hear about all the different applications of AI in so many different fields that you wouldn't even think about, especially when you were talking about how it's involved in the arts somehow. I'm personally really involved in the arts, and even myself, I can see things here and there where like technology and AI is being incorporated into like just daily activities that people who are involved in the arts do. And then I just have another question from our chat. So this is going back to the work-life balance kind of topic. Do you take digital days off? And are there days where being in front of a screen for too long burns you out? And this question is from Dhwani Patel.
Yeah, I do think that's a thing. When you're staring at a computer for too long, when you're staring at a paper for too long, you will eventually get burned out, no matter how much you're into it. Hey, I mean, there are days when I stare at a chessboard for too long, I'm like, oh, I'm so sick of it. So yeah, you just sometimes just have to take your time out, right? We are human beings, we're not robots, and that's why we cannot work for 22 hours a day. We need to take time off. We need to switch subjects. I mean, after you stare at a computer screen for too long, you want to go out and play some soccer, basketball, and vice versa. I mean, like maybe if you have been playing basketball for 10 hours straight, you probably want some screen time as well. So
Right.
work-life balance there.
And just one more question off that same topic. Has the pandemic slowed down your productivity at home?
I doubt it.
probably to a certain degree. I hope it doesn't affect my productivity too much. I think the most impact will be that when I was working, I actually need to constantly engage my teammates for discussions, for insights, for innovative ideas, and working at home make it less convenient to bug them. So that
Yeah,
will that
you can't really
yeah, I
just
mean,
go over and tap them
you
on the
don't
shoulder.
want
It's
to
like,
you don't
hey,
want to bug your friend like on Slack once every 5 minutes, right? That's just rude. But when they're just sitting beside me, I can always turn and say, hey, I have this idea. Can you check it out and stuff? So that will play a big part in terms of productivity. Otherwise, connecting to my office computer via TeamViewer is actually obviously slower than just being there personally. And of course, I don't have a home office set up, so working in a cozy environment does slow it down for me. I have to admit that. I don't want to admit that, but I think it does. I try my best not let it get to me, trying to stay focused when I'm working. And I do recognize there's room for improvement, I guess. So thank you for pointing that out, of course.
okay, Gary, I have my own personal question for you. So we just talked about how, AI is expanding to not just to like more and more fields now, and you said like it's even spreading to art. Do you believe that there will be a point in time, maybe the next couple 100 years, maybe not even? Do you think that there's a time when AI will reach a point where where it's able to, like, take for instance music, able to generate music, which is, yeah, do you think it'll ever reach that point where it can surpass us?
Wasn't there algorithms already generating new music? Like
Yeah,
if there is not, I'm pretty sure they'll work on that direction. Because I swear I have seen paper trying to analyze what tones make a good piece of music. And here's the thing. The thing about data science is that it's not about playing chess or even paint pictures. It's actually about finding the underlying pattern behind things. And hey, we always say that okay, art is without rules and stuff, but you have to agree that there are things that there are paintings that look good, look better than others. There are music pieces that sounds better than others, and what makes these better or worse? There's a pattern or a lot of different patterns behind them. But
yeah,
as long
there
as
is.
there are patterns, there should be, and this is ideology kind of thing. There should be ways of finding them out, and once they are found out, we can construct good or even intentionally bad pieces according to these patterns, and that's what data science do the best.
Well, yeah, I guess you do have a point. Technically, everything has rules. Like music, there's
Exactly.
keys, there's different chords you use. Some chords sound really bad put together. So yeah, I guess to an extent, maybe we will see AI generated pieces. But yeah,
Yeah, I'm pretty confident on that
the
subject.
looking for patterns was the most important in data science. Wow.
Anyway, Gary, as much as we would love to chat with you all day, we're afraid our time together is coming to an end. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with us. This was really insightful, and I think a lot of us and our viewers gained a lot of perspective on different topics. And it was very nice to talk to you today.
Happy to be here, and thanks for having me. It's been fun. The past hour I have us talking has been a good time for me. So yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. So we will be sharing the link for anyone who's watching this live stream to watch it again, and so that will be circulated pretty soon.
I hope you'll be able to join us in the audience when it comes time for our other guests. Of course, if you have the
send me the
time.
link.
Yeah. Also, do you want to play chess tomorrow?
I will see my schedule.
Okay. Yeah, I can't do it today though. So.
Great.
I'll also play a game with Chris sometime too. All right. Thank you for taking time out of your day and to educate us. I know you love teaching other people, right? You love sharing insights, so I'm sure you enjoyed it.